The perimeter strains under pressure as dust whips sideways through the canyon floor, pushed by rotor wash from an aircraft holding in a tight orbit overhead. Fractured fuselage metal reflects the stutter of distant muzzle flashes, and a dim red chem light marks the rescue medic tightening a tourniquet beside her. TSAT Erin Calloway stands at the forward edge because the liability is hers. She is the senior rescue specialist on the ground, and the downed aircrew is her responsibility until command proves otherwise. Visibility drops under 100 yards. Low-frequency concussive thumps roll through the gravel, each one loosening rock along the ridge. Radio hiss cuts through every transmission as Erin tries to maintain link with higher headquarters. Command assumes the aircrew is already gone, but she sees enough movement near the wreckage to tell her otherwise. Signal integrity falls below half. Dust lifts in sheets as incoming rounds walk closer to the perimeter. Fuel timelines on supporting aircraft shrink with every orbit, and the narrow window for evacuation tightens. Sensitive equipment inside the wreckage remains exposed, and hostile fighters keep pressing for a breach. Perimeter control is slipping. Her channel to command cuts out again? Erin lowers herself behind a fractured wing root, grounding her next decision in duty, not emotion. The mission hangs on whether she can hold this line long enough to confirm survivors and force command to reassess the situation on the ground. Downed aircrew, perimeter collapsing. Rotor modulation deepens overhead as the aircraft banks, scattering gravel across her gloves. She steadies herself for what comes next. 1 second before the fight shifts again. Red strobe light washes across rescue vehicle armor while dust spirals under rotor wash. A gloved finger traces grid squares on a dim map sleeve as the rescue element holds position under tightening timelines. A short radio burst cuts through the noise, requesting status from the ground team. Signal integrity drops again. Subscribe for true operations. Tap subscribe now and tell me where you're listening from right now on record. The blackout forward strip sits quiet at 0210 hours, carved into scrubland and lit only by vehicle headlights and a scattering of chem lights fixed along uneven ground. Engines idle low on loose soil as TSAT Erin Calloway steps through her pre-movement checks, pulling each harness strap firm and running a quick hand along the comms cables routed over her rescue vest. Her detachment waits for her signal. Out here. Every action they take falls under her authority until higher headquarters issues formal approval to advance. Visibility falls under 100 yards. The wind moves across the strip in irregular gusts, rattling loose sheet metal on a maintenance shelter positioned near the perimeter. A muted aircraft APU hum carries through the dark, its vibration running across the packed soil. Erin studies the sand table in the back of a parked vehicle, rechecking the approach routes she marked earlier with a grease pencil. The convoy expected to secure the access road should already be set, but reports confirm it misread the route and drifted half a mile off, blocking the only reliable corridor. That mistake forces her entire rescue element onto foot movement through unstable terrain. Sensor refresh rate slow under dust. Erin raises a handheld thermal device and scans toward the ridgeline that hides the crash site. At first, the image returns cluttered, distorted by wind-driven particulates. But after a moment, the overlay stabilizes. A plume of heat registers against the wreck's shadow. Faint, irregular, but present. Higher headquarters has already logged the aircrew as presumed lost on impact. Erin does not accept that summary without her own confirmation. Command channel cuts out again. She signals her detachment to hold position until she verifies movement paths. Each Air Force specialist under her direction responds in quiet acknowledgement, maintaining perimeter offsets while mapping their steps against the rough terrain. Loose soil shifts under boots, forcing the team to slow. The blackout conditions limit depth perception, and only the alternating pattern of headlights and chem lights keeps orientation intact. Erin checks distance to the wreck, just over 100 yards uphill, across terrain that dips into a shallow draw. Movement speed drops in uneven ground. Distant gunfire echoes across canyon walls, faint enough not to threaten the strip directly, but close enough to remind them how isolated the team has become. The misrouted convoy remains unable to reposition without risking further entanglement, leaving Aaron's detachment the only element capable of reaching the downed aircraft quickly. She radios for an updated assessment from headquarters. The reply comes through a thin layer of static. Headquarters remains confident the aircrew did not survive impact and does not authorize full commitment yet. Liability for the approach sits with her detachment. Aaron steadies her breathing and lifts the thermal device again. The outline appears clearer this time. Intermittent heat, not debris cooling. She makes note of the angle and distance, planning the safest route across scrub and rock ledges. The wind picks up again and sweeps dust sideways in front of the team. She calls for her medic to check gear one more time and confirms each member carries enough water, trauma supplies, and extraction equipment to manage a casualty scenario. Sensor latency increases as dust thickens. The blackout strip's artificial lighting creates pockets of clarity but also deep shadows that break continuity along approach lines. Aaron studies how the wind shapes the dust patterns. Movement becomes more difficult where the soil loosens into powder. The distant hum of supporting aircraft remains steady, indicating engines hold sufficient fuel for now, but each delay tightens their window. Command repeats its assumption over a degraded line. They believe the aircrew is beyond recovery. Aaron looks again at the thermal feed and sees no justification for that assumption. Heat signatures in that position suggest sheltering behavior behind fractured fuselage ribs, not lifeless wreckage. Improvised forward strip. Night. She reports her findings formally, detailing temperature variance and shape consistency. The response is slow. The gap between field evidence and remote interpretation widens. Her detachment waits in disciplined silence as she evaluates next steps. The misaligned convoy continues to occupy the wrong route, limiting external reinforcement. Aaron tightens her grip on the map sleeve, marking a revised path that compensates for shifting ground and poor visibility. Wind rattles loose sheet metal again. She issues instructions for staggered movement order should authorization arrive. Each specialist acknowledges by rank, confirming readiness. Aaron's own posture remains steady, her attention fixed on the contradiction between what she sees and what headquarters asserts. The first fracture in the system appears here, the assumption that distance grants clarity. Before the next beat unfolds, that assumption will become the point of failure that puts her entire team at risk. The ridgeline above the rescue detachment erupts with short bursts of probing fire, not a full assault, just precise flashes testing their movement as they navigate uneven ground. T-Sacket Aaron Calloway immediately shifts her element lower into a shallow draw, using broken rock to shield the medic carrying critical trauma gear. Dust hangs in the air, and visibility tightens as muzzle flashes strobe against canyon walls. Vehicles sit a quarter-mile behind them, separated by terrain, too fractured to cross quickly, leaving the team fully committed on foot. Visibility drops under 100 yards. Gravel slides under their boots as Aaron positions two specialists to hold a staggered perimeter. She checks each sector herself, hands steady despite the intermittent rifle reports echoing across the canyon. The medic's pack shifts with every stride, reminding her how exposed they remain without supporting fire or aerial overwatch. Each time she keys her radio, static overtakes the opening half-second of transmission before clearing enough to pass essential traffic. Command channel degrades again. Aaron requests support assets through the proper node, sending coordinates and a short description of the hostile fire pattern. Minutes pass with no acknowledgement. She repeats the request, maintaining professional cadence. The team compresses slightly to maintain sight lines as the terrain folds around them, creating blind corners. Aaron calls for small adjustments to spacing and ensures the medic takes the most protected slot. Support assets remain unavailable. Incoming rounds strike the dirt near their left flank, throwing dust into a low, rolling cloud. Aaron directs the nearest specialist to shift 2 steps right, keeping the formation tight but not clustered. She pulls her radio to adjust channels, trying to raise a higher headquarters node that might route support more effectively than the saturated local network. Perimeter control is slipping. The team slows again as the draw narrows. Starlight offers limited relief, only enough to outline the jagged silhouette of the ridge above them. Chem lights clip to their gear, produce faint glows used only for internal alignment. Erin keeps her voice low, issuing clear directives on movement, pace, and angle. She notes every degradation, terrain, comms, distance, visibility, because each factor compounds their vulnerability. Movement speed continues to drop on unstable ground. Another burst of probing fire cracks overhead. Echoes bounce irregularly across the canyon, masking the shooter's exact position. Erin angles her team deeper into the draw until the ridge offers partial defilade. She keys the radio again, providing a concise sitrep and repeating her request for overwatch or diversion assets. The answer finally comes, but not from the air operations desk she expected. A remote staff officer responds with a retreat directive, stating the air crew is beyond recovery, and the ground element is to withdraw to vehicle positions immediately. Erin acknowledges the order by rank and repeats it for clarity, but her eyes remain on the terrain toward the wreckage. Her own sensor readings contradict the assumption. She knows the directive has authority, yet she also knows ground truth requires verification before abandonment. Retreat directives increase in frequency. An incoming round strikes a rock outcrop at shoulder height, sending chips across Erin's sleeve. She signals the team to crouch lower and stabilize the perimeter. Rifle reports echo again, sharper this time, pushing them tighter together. Gravel shifts beneath them as they adjust their footing, trying not to expose their silhouettes to the ridge above. Retreat order issued. Erin toggles her radio to a higher channel, seeking confirmation that the directive accounts for her sensor reports from earlier. Static clouds the response. She keeps her tone even, reiterating the presence of heat signatures at the wreck. The staff officer repeats the withdrawal instruction, adding that no support assets are available to reinforce the rescue attempt. Support assets remain unavailable. Erin draws a controlled breath and reorients the team. The medic checks his equipment quickly, tightening straps before moving forward again in a half-crouch. Dust floats in the air behind them, illuminated only when a muzzle flash fires along the ridge. Erin evaluates angles of fire and determines the probing pattern is meant to restrict their advance, not eliminate them outright. An attempt to contain movement until reinforcements for the hostile element arrive. Liability for the approach sits entirely with her element. Now. She signals for a left pivot around a boulder formation to reduce exposure. The team executes smoothly. Radio clicks past partial transmissions, none of them containing the support confirmation she needs. The distance to the wreck narrows, though not enough to gain visual. Erin holds the medic behind her as she scans again for muzzle flashes, listening for subtle changes in the incoming fire's tempo. Command assumptions continue to diverge from ground evidence. The detachment pauses in cover while Erin checks her thermal device. Dust interference blurs the first pass. She adjusts the settings and scans again, still seeing faint plumes in the direction of the crash. Irregular, but present. If headquarters continues to treat those readings as debris cooling instead of potential survivors, they will force the team to retreat without verification. Movement patterns on the ridge shift unpredictably. The team edges farther into the draw, staying low. Erin calls for another sitrep to be logged, stating current position, fire indicators, and sensor discrepancies. The response from the remote staff officer remains unchanged. Withdraw and regroup. Aircrew presumed lost. Erin acknowledges again, because protocol demands honesty and discipline, but adds the note that she is still evaluating ground conditions. Perimeter tension increases as hostile checks grow more frequent. The canyon walls amplify each rifle crack, each fragment of gravel sliding underfoot, and each strained transmission. Erin tightens formation spacing again to keep the medic protected. She senses the moment approaching when the situation will no longer hold under current orders. The distance to the wreck, the lack of support, the rising volume of probing fire. Every variable is converging toward a point where the mission's trajectory will break unless something shifts. She steadies her breathing and evaluates the ridgeline one more time. Knowing they are nearing the last second before this operation becomes unsustainable under the assumptions guiding it now. Erin pushes through the last span of debris, moving in a low, controlled glide to keep her profile beneath the broken rise of the canyon wall. Incoming bursts snap overhead, cutting through drifting dust. Each step shifts loose grit under her boots as she closes the remaining distance. Roughly 40 yards to the fractured aircraft. She slides behind a jagged section of fuselage, its metal ribs bent sharply inward, and stabilizes her breathing. Thermal resolution drops under dust interference. She steadies the thermal monocular in her gloved hands and adjusts focus until the image clears enough to differentiate ambient heat from structural residue. The wreck radiates uneven warmth. But behind a collapsed panel she detects two concentrated signatures. The shapes are irregular and faint, but the movement is unmistakable. Erin notes rise and fall patterns consistent with shallow breathing and subtle arm motion. The evidence contradicts headquarters' assumption that the aircrew did not survive the impact. Command channel stabilizes for the first time. She keys her radio, allowing the hiss to settle before transmitting. Her voice remains steady as she delivers coordinates. Relative bearing and confirmation of life signs. She outlines the type of movement observed, the thermal intensity, and the location of shielding metal that may impede extraction. She adds environmental context, unstable debris, partial cover from the fuselage, hostile probing fire shifting position along the ridge. Movement signatures increase behind the wreck. Erin scans again, verifying that both aircrew signatures remain active. Dust drifts across the monocular lens, requiring her to wipe it briefly with her glove before continuing. She performs a second pass to confirm temperature variance within expected human ranges under compression. Satisfied with the consistency, she transmits a formal confirmation and requests immediate mobilization of support assets, emphasizing that the evidence is not speculative but recorded and repeatable. Liability for confirmation sits entirely with her. The command channel goes quiet. Static rises, falls, and then clears. Erin holds her position, back against the fractured fuselage, while dust settles in slow patterns around her. Her team advances cautiously behind her, using the narrow pathway between boulders to maintain cover. She signals them to hold position until headquarters issues a formal directive based on the new information. Support elements adjust their vector. A new voice enters the channel, calm, authoritative, and identified by rank. The speaker acknowledges receipt of Erin's transmission and confirms that her evidence has been logged into the operational monitoring system. The voice states that prior assumptions regarding the aircrew's status are now under revision. Erin hears the controlled shift in tone, the pivot from dismissal to activation. The voice then issues a directive. Rescue element, stand by. Support package diverting to your position. Eyes on confirmed. Erin watches her team reposition as the ridge's fire slackens, the shooters adjusting to her detachment's reduced movement. She keeps her thermal device raised for one more reading. Heat signatures remain stable. Movement persists. She marks the debris pattern in her mind, identifying entry points where her specialists can safely approach once suppression assets arrive. The radio hiss clears as her transmission locks. She passes the updated directive to her team in clipped, steady phrasing. The medic adjusts his pack and moves to a crouched staging point. A support aircraft hum builds faintly in the distance, banking toward the canyon approach. Erin senses the shift in operational posture. The mission has moved from assumed fatality to confirmed survivability. and every subsequent action now depends on the evidence she provided. No theatrics accompany the transition. It is procedural, accountable, and traceable through proper channels. Thermal drift stabilizes as dust begins to settle. Erin reports her position again, clarifying the narrow corridor she occupies and the hazards posed by debris collapse. She identifies load-bearing sections of the fuselage and estimates the gap where her team will maneuver once suppression fire is active. She states clearly that the hostile element has not committed to a full assault and appears reliant on containment rather than advance. Information headquarters must incorporate into the evolving response. Command acknowledgement maintains steady cadence. A second aircraft sound rises. Distant rotor modulation from a support platform repositioning? Erin notes its approach and updates her log. She moves a few inches along the shattered fuselage to improve the angle of her thermal scan. The metal under her gloved hand carries residual heat from the earlier impact, but beneath that, she can feel subtle vibrations from shifting debris. She marks the instability and prepares to brief her team on safe approach lanes. Proximity to the wreck decreases to less than 20 yards. Her radio receives a short directive. Her element is to maintain cover while support assets establish overwatch. Erin acknowledges and signals her team with a deliberate hand motion. She updates her notes on the two survivors, confirming that both exhibit intermittent movement consistent with effort to signal or reposition. She records the timing verbally, ensuring a traceable sequence for later review. A support aircraft crosses the canyon mouth. Dust lifts in a rolling sheet as the aircraft adjusts vector. Erin braces against the fuselage and maintains eyes on the wreck. The command voice returns, stating that her evidence has initiated a shift in operational priority. Rescue and extraction assets are now committed. Erin absorbs the information without visible reaction beyond a short nod. This is not vindication. It is procedure aligning with fact. Thermal contrast sharpens under improved angle. She tracks the signatures once more and confirms they remain active. Her team prepares to advance once Overwatch suppresses the remaining hostile positions. Erin updates headquarters with a clear, concise statement. The survivors are stable enough to attempt extraction once suppression begins. She emphasizes structural weakness in the surrounding debris and provides an estimated approach time of less than 30 seconds once the entry point is secured. Command verifies receipt and authorizes staging. The dust shifts again as another burst of fire glances off the twisted fuselage, but it is weaker now, imprecise, likely reactionary to aircraft movement. Erin stays pressed to the metal ribs, listening to the ground-level vibration as the aircraft adjusts altitude. Her team holds position. She keeps her tone level as she transmits an updated readiness status. The channel responds in calm confirmation, with evidence logged, directives updated, and support assets diverting toward her position. Erin notes internally that the immediate threat has stabilized. The hostile element has lost initiative. Command has shifted from retreat assumption to active rescue posture because her verification made denial impossible. She closes her report with a single, steady acknowledgement that the operation now moves forward under corrected understanding, and that responsibility for that correction is fully documented. A stretcher lifts under steady hands as support aircraft cast a pale glow across the landing zone. Wind moves across the ground, carrying dust around the rescue team while muted medical equipment hums beside them. T-Skint Erin Calloway stands near the loading point, posture controlled, reviewing the casualty card marked with precise timestamps. Her judgment is methodical. She acts under doctrine that requires verification of life before withdrawal, regardless of remote assumptions. Seniors review her logged evidence, tracing each entry, each coordinate, each confirmation of heat signature. They do not question her tone or motives. They examine the record she generated while under fire and under pressure from retreat directives. Erin understands her responsibility. Protect the wounded, report ground truth, and ensure that each step is traceable within U.S. chain of command procedure. Nothing she does moves outside her lane of authority. Casualty tracking updates with new arrival times. Floodlights flicker as the stretcher locks into place. Erin steadies the oxygen mask on one of the rescued aircrew, while a medic secures straps and verifies breathing effort. She maintains the same calm cadence she used during the approach, because the mission does not end with extraction. It ends with documented transfer of care and accurate accountability. Her focus is on the record, not recognition. Duty over assumption. Support aircraft reposition. Their landing lights sweeping across loose equipment. Erin signs the casualty logs, confirms evidence reports are transmitted, and ensures each action is documented with time, location, and responsible personnel. There is no ceremony, no elevated rhetoric, no emotional gathering, only process. She stands in the muted wind, shoulders heavy but steady, knowing that doctrine held, ground truth, verified and recorded, carries the weight. Her certainty rests in that continuity and in the accountability that follows it. No ceremonial salutes, no emotional group formations. Resolution remains in documentation, accountability, and professionalism. Night air cools over the secured wreckage while Erin's team packs gear in controlled silence. A rescue medic brushes dust from a thermal lens, checking that the device logs remain intact. A thin layer of radio static fades into quiet around the site as the ground picture settles. The conflict is no longer gunfire. It is the procedural divide between a remote retreat order and the on-scene evidence that contradicted it. What would you do? Erin followed doctrine, verify, protect, document. Remote authority followed assumption. Impact meant no survivors. The cost of choosing either path is real, measured in lives, accountability, and the chain of command that must answer for both action and inaction. Command channel stabilizes with no further guidance. One choice is to fall back on orders even when sensor data proves otherwise. The other is to confirm the truth firsthand, accepting that you may answer for that decision later in writing. Now choose one and state your answer in the comments. The night horizon holds steady as support aircraft lift off and bank toward higher airspace, their lights fading against the dark. Rotor wash settles into a low, sustained tone across the landing zone. Erin closes a gear locker, securing the last of her detachment's equipment, while the damaged aircraft sits strapped for transport a few yards away. The mission file moves toward closure, documented and accountable. Next mission loading, support assets clear the canyon and return to station. This channel follows the work of American personnel who operate under pressure. Record what happened, and keep the record straight. Every operation ends, but the next one is already forming in the queue, waiting for its own accounting. If you want more verified mission reports delivered in this format, like this video and subscribe right now. The next mission is already waiting.